Welcome to Business Legal Lifecycle TV, the live TV show all about the legal aspects of your business to help educate you on complex legal terms in an easy to understand manner, to help understand why you need to do certain things in your business from a legal point of view, and to help you develop a plan for the future. Our mission at Business Legal Lifecycle is to help empower all small to medium-sized businesses around the world to get access to legal advice so that they can help build their communities and make the world a better place.
Hi everyone, and welcome to Business Legal Lifecycle TV. Today is Wednesday, so here at the show we do our longer form show on Wednesday, and today it's an interview show where we go through a number of questions, and I'm interviewing Jeremy for the today's show. We're talking about phase 11, which is selling the whole or part of your business, and also listing on the stock exchange. So, Jeremy, talking about phase 11.
Yep.
What is this phase all about?
So this phase, as you said, it's called phase 11, sale of whole or part of the business. And really, this is at the peak of the business legal lifecycle. So for anyone of our listeners or viewers who is familiar with the business legal lifecycle, and if you're not, head over to businesslegallifecycle.com.au. You'll see a copy of it. It's 13 phases of when you should take certain steps in your business from a legal perspective. Phase 11 is the pinnacle. It's right at the top of the business legal lifecycle. It's where you want to get your business to. Now, this doesn't mean that you have to sell your business necessarily. It means that you want to get your business to the point of being able to be ready to be sold. And the reason that you want to have that is something might happen to you and you want to sell the business. So really this is about having everything in place ready to go to sell your business. Whether or not you choose to sell your business or not is up to you at the time. But it's really about having your business ready to be sold and or listed on the stock exchange, which is a form of sale. And I'll go through, I'm sure you got some questions for me on that later, and I'll go through that later. So there's really a legal distinction between the business that you operate and the entity that actually owns the business. So if you followed the previous shows in my book and our previous content and podcasts and all the rest of it, you'll know that in phase 2 of the business legal lifecycle, we recommend that you operate the business through some sort of structure that's independent of you as the business owner. In Australia, that might be just a company or a trust structure. In the UK, that's a limited liability partnership is the most recommended one. And in the US, that's an LLC, a limited liability company, which is very similar to a corporation here in Australia. And so if you've got that separate entity, you can either sell your interest in that entity to someone else, or you can sell the business by itself. So when you sell the business yourself, that's really what we're going to talk about in this phase. And that's really selling the business from behind it. So Craig and I operate a business, SMS Law Proprietary Limited, which is a company in Australia, operates Stretton Mason Lawyers. Stretton Mason Lawyers is a separate company, which it can be bought and sold if we so chose to other people who might want to own our law firm. The sale of shares in the entity that owns the business is selling. So I own shares in the SMS Law Proprietary Limited. I could sell those shares to someone else, and I could sell the shares. So that's something different. Or we could list the shares and on the stock exchange, and that's another way of selling your shares. So this phase is all about that sale of business, but it's really important to understand that if you're in this, in business at the moment, and you're saying to us, look, I've got a lifestyle business, I'm not looking at selling. I want to own this thing for the next 20 years. That's great. But having everything in place to sell the business first up is really what's important, because you never know when your circumstances might change and you might want to look at selling earlier. So Craig, that's the answer to the first question.
Great. Thank you for that. All right. So we're talking about selling the business in the first instance for today's show. We'll move on to stock exchange last. So in terms of selling the business, can you run through the process that it normally goes along? Obviously, there'll be differences depending on jurisdictions and businesses, but generally, what's the process for selling the business?
Yeah, so as you said, it does change, and there's many ways to be right, as we like to say. And so you really need to consult with your team of advisors to make sure that you're covering all aspects of the sale to maximise your price. And so there's really 11 steps I'm going to go through today. And as I say, get some advice and make sure you do this right, because this is not the kind of thing that you want to be doing yourself. So the first step is, even before you actually list your business for sale, is you really need to collate all the information that you have about your business. So when you're selling a business, you think about what you'd want as a buyer of a business. You need to think in that vein of all the information that they're going to want in relation to your business. They want to know everything about the business, its history. They want to know what to look at for the history, so they can look at the future. You need to have a central database of information. There's great resources at the moment, Dropbox and Box and all those, and Google Drive, where you can list lots of documents. Get everything together. Don't just give information that you think might be relevant. Give everything that could be relevant, and you don't make that determination. Let your business broker or your lawyer or your accountant determine what actually needs to be in place. You need to put everything together, and that's what I say. So you should have a Dropbox folder or any sort of those folders that you put all that information into. You need to determine what agreements you've got in place, what personal guarantees you've got in place, what bank guarantees you might have in place, what deposits you have in place. Because all that stuff might need to be released back to you. And you want to make sure that your advisors have all of the information in front of them before you go through the process. Once you've got all the information in front of you, then you'll be able to put together really a picture for your broker and your lawyer and your accountant of where all the moving parts are in the transaction, because these aren't simple transactions. They're not like buying a house. There are many moving parts, and so you want to get them right. The second part, and I put this as a second part, but it's really just as important as the first part, is your financial information. So a buyer will not only want to look at your agreements and the other information relating to your business, they're going to want to look at the financial history of the business. Now, whilst the financial history doesn't necessarily indicate what the future will be, it is still the best indication of the future performance of the company by looking at its past performance. So, and that will allow a buyer to actually have a look at the finances. Now, most businesses, in truth, aren't ready to be in a position to have the financial information ready straight away, because most business owners will have expenses that they may not want the new buyer to see, or they might have personal expenses that they might want to run. So on average, a good advisor will tell you that a business is around 2 years from having the financial information right. So we always say make sure that you've actually gone through that stuff, and make sure that you've got external bookkeepers and accountants going through to make sure that all the information is right. The third one, and if you watched our show on Monday, we talked about business brokers and what to look out for in the business broker. But the third step is to interview business brokers. So don't just go on Google and find the first one and go with them. Interview different business brokers. Different business brokers have different strengths, just like different lawyers and different accountants have different strengths and different weaknesses. So you want to interview different brokers and ask them the kind of questions that we had in the previous show, which was show 182. Which was about the 5 things to look out for in a business broker. And look at all the different things that you might want to put together for a broker and what you actually want. And you've got to find someone that you know, like, and trust. At the end of the day, you're entrusting your baby, your business to this person. So you want to make sure of that and and that they're going to be the right person. The next step, and this comes before choosing the business broker, is actually to figure out what you want from the sale. So, in the process of interviewing multiple business brokers, they're going to have different ideas. They're going to have different recommendations. They're going to talk to you through different ways that you can sell your business. And from that, you need to determine what you actually want from the sale. So what is it that you want? And I always like to think through in any negotiation, what are the list of things that I want done, and then what are my non-negotiables? What are the non-negotiables that I'm not willing to go past to actually put the sale together? Be reasonable about it. Think about everything that you want in place, but be reasonable about what you need in place. Because step 5 then is to choose the business broker, and you're choosing the business broker that's going to be the best one to get you to where you want to what you want to achieve. So, once you've interviewed the business brokers, worked out what you want, and then choose a business broker that you think is going to help get you the best there. Now, this is a decision that you make. You've got to own that decision, but do that, and you'll get the best business broker. The next step is step 6, and that's to market the business for sale. So there's many different ways to market your business. We've interviewed different people in this business. I have a good relationship with a lot of business brokers. Some that have traditional businesses where they will have a list of buyers and they'll advertise in the normal places. There's other ones that will list on, make a website and list that on social media and all the like, and really do targeted advertising. So you need to make sure that you get the right type of marketing for your business that's going to achieve the highest price for you. Then you need to consider all your offers. So you should have, if the marketing campaign is done correctly, you should have multiple offers, and the broker comes to you with those. So you really need to make sure that you're happy with whatever offer comes, and not just the price. Sometimes it could be about what are the other conditions. One of the great things that buyers will do is that they'll want you to work in the business, and you may not want to do that. And there might be a performance criteria based on how much you actually can turn over for the next couple of years for your business. If you do that, that can honestly lead to a lot of trouble, because you could have these goals to achieve. And let's face it, most business owners are like me. They're creators, and they think they can achieve anything. Just because there's a bright shining object, that may not be the best offer for you. So really consider whether or not you can do that. And that comes into step 8, which is about negotiating and accepting the offer. Once your offer meets your minimum requirements, that I talked about setting some red lines, then you really need to discuss what that looks like with your lawyer. I recommend that you see a lawyer right from the beginning. I do understand that a lot of people may not want to do that. They may see the cost that's involved. If you haven't engaged a lawyer by step 8, engage a lawyer. It's so important. The conditions that come in at this stage are really important, and your lawyer can make sure that all the conditions are right to make sure that you maximize the sale. Because a lot of people do think that they don't need a lawyer till step 9, which is the transaction. And sure, a lawyer can handle the transaction. However, it can be a lot more difficult and a lot more costly for you if you haven't involved the lawyer earlier on. And that's this step 9, the transaction, is really where we get involved as lawyers and help you through the transaction. We monitor dates, we help answer questions, we make sure that contracts and agreements and leases and due diligence and finance are all done correctly to make sure that you get the right stuff done. But don't leave engaging a lawyer to that stage, because you can see that stage 9 is when you really need a lawyer, and you must have a lawyer, but there's 8 stages before that where you really need to make sure that you've got legal advice to make sure it's done correctly. Step 10 is the settlement. I always remember early on in my career when I went to a settlement, and the settlement took 15 seconds, and the buyer came along to the settlement, or the seller, I think it was actually, and they said, "What am I paying you all this money for that transaction?" And that's for doing all that. And I had to explain to him that no, the work was actually everything done beforehand. So you need to just be mindful of that. The settlement's the easy part. If you've done everything right, you have everything set up beforehand. And the final step is step 11, which is after settlement. So there's always going to be steps, especially with a business sale, where you need to have things in place after settlement. There might be retentions, there might be following up with landlords, there might be following up with other government departments. So that's the 11 steps, Craig. That's a lot of information to get over to people, but hopefully they can see the importance of getting it right.
Yeah, absolutely. Follow the process, and hopefully you've got that step 10 settlement and went off without a hitch, and then you move on after that. So that's the business, or selling the business process. So I've got 2 questions for you. I'll ask them both at the now. One is, so what's the distinction between selling the business or buying the shares in the company that trades the business? And if, for instance, you did go down the path of doing that, buying the shares, what do you need to have in place that's, say, different than for a business contract?
Yeah, great question. And if you buy the shares in the company, you're really buying all of the trading history and all of the debts and liabilities for the company. So for instance, say that you buy a company, say you bought our company, and we had a work cover claim that we didn't know about from 3 years ago, and that claim was still able to be pursued. If you bought the business, you would have that liability, and you would have to meet that liability as the owner. Or say if there was a tax or liability that was existing from 3 or 4 years ago, the tax liability attaches to the company, not the business. So really the big difference is due diligence. So due diligence is a term that's thrown around as basically meant to do all the investigations in relation to the business. And if you're going to buy a company, there's a whole different range of due diligence that you need to do in relation to that company to make sure that it's done right. So, if you don't do that right, then you can cause yourself a lot of headaches by not having that correctly done. The other thing that you'll want if you're buying the shares in a company as opposed to the business are warranties. So warranties are promises. They're promises that that basically mean that you're promising as a seller that there's a certain position in relation to the company. So you want, if you're buying the shares in a company, you want warranties to be really, really tight to make sure that they're done correctly. But Craig, I think that probably answers that question. You want to move on to question 4?
Yeah. So then you have a share sale agreement as part of that, I presume. So what is a share sale agreement?
Yeah, so great question. So share sale agreement is the thing if you're doing buying the shares in the company. And that's where you buy the shares in the company that operates the business rather than the business itself. The main reason that you do this is for tax reasons. So as a seller, there could be better tax advantages for you selling the company that operates the business, and there could be tax advantages for the buyer. This is where you really need to get the right type of advice from your accountant and from your lawyer. So the transfer of shares is done. As I said before, you have a share sale agreement, and that is very similar to a business sale agreement, but you need to think about things like restraints of trade. They become more important with a share sale agreement. You want to think about finance and due diligence. And as I said before, due diligence really is the key when you're buying shares. You want to make sure that your accountant and your lawyer have been through all of the financial and accounting history of the company, not just the last couple of years. If it's been operating for 20 years, you want them to go through as much of that history as you can, because there could be liabilities that you just don't know about. So as a seller of a business, selling the shares can be a great thing. As a buyer, the buyer's got to be really careful. So what I always say to my clients when they want to sell the shares in their business is that they should go off and get advice from their accountant and their lawyer, and also get all the information, all the trading history that you can get together to make sure that there are no skeletons in the closet, and really be prepared to wear those warranties. So wearing the warranties to make sure that if there are any future claims for past conduct that you're not aware of, that you know what they are. Good warranties do go on for several pages. They are confusing. Make sure you get advice because they are confusing. You want to make sure they get right. You get them right. Another way of dealing with that is retention. So often you might hear the word retention, which is the seller might withhold some money in a trust account, and the buyer may keep that for a claim. I've done that before. I can talk about it now. I had one where a retention was held for 5 years based on the warranties, and that was done for the advantage of both parties from a tax planning point of view. It was also done for the advantage of both parties for the buyer, so that if there were any claims on the business that our client was selling, and this was a 8-figure business sale, it wasn't a small one, and it was selling to a large company, you can actually have a retention that's there to reduce any claims. So a share sale agreement, look, they're complicated documents. They're definitely not something you want to do yourself because you want to make sure that they're done right. When they're done right, though, they can really protect both sides and have a really great business sale. So that's our share sale agreement, Craig.
Excellent. So I think generally follow the process, get the right advice, and hopefully everything goes smoothly. So that's selling the business, either through selling the actual business or selling the shares in a company. Is there anything else you wanted to add in relation to that part of this phase of the business legal lifecycle?
Only just the importance of due diligence. So due diligence is really, really important. And a lot of people think it's a cost. It's not. It's an investment in the future. So do your due diligence right. Make sure you sit down and work with your lawyer and accountant on a due diligence plan. I'll tell a quick story, Craig, just the importance of this, especially for the lawyers that are listening. A technique that I use that's really good is a lot of people, a lot of business owners, they don't like to read contracts. I get it. Reading contracts, they're long and boring, and you often may not want to do it because you've got better things to do. I was doing a business sale a couple of years ago, and I said to the business owners, just sign the contract, and afterwards he said to me, I presume everything's right in that I haven't read it. And I said, no, that's not the way this works. You read the contract. And I said, you read the contract, you tell me that there's nothing bad in there. We have a due diligence clause, and we're going to meet, and this was a Friday, we're going to meet on Monday morning, and we're going to go through and we're going to agree to the scope of the due diligence. And your accountant is too. The client was referred from an accountant. And so we sat down, we met at 8 o'clock on Monday morning, and we wrote down a plan of what due diligence actually meant. Now, why this was important was that the client, there was lots of moving parts. This was a large business he was buying. There were lots of moving parts the client hadn't told me, that the accountant didn't even know. By reading the contract, the client said to me on Monday morning, I am so glad you got me to read that contract. I now understand more about what I'm buying and the things that are going to stress me out over this transaction. And we sat down, and it took us 3 hours, and we sat down, the three of us, and worked out a plan of all of his concerns, all of my concerns, all of the accountant's concerns, and then we wrote up a plan of who was going to address what and who was going to do what work. That investment in time and energy really meant that we got the due diligence done right. He didn't actually end up proceeding with that purchase because we came up with a plan. There were a bunch of promises that the seller made. There was no broker involved. There were a bunch of promises that the seller had made that weren't going to be fulfilled on the contract. And the due diligence, investigations we did uncovered a lot of problems. The accountants uncovered a lot of problems. And because he went through that process, we saved him a lot of heartache in the future. If we'd done what he wanted to do, which was just, the lawyers just review these agreements and accountants review these financials, we would never have known what was concerning to him. And, he ended up buying other businesses after that. The mere fact that we went through it with him meant that, we have a client for life because, he knew that we knew what we were talking about and could do that. So just the importance of due diligence and especially for the lawyers, on the call today, don't be afraid to push back on your client if the client says, you just take care of it. Don't let that happen because that will just end up in a bad relationship with you and them. And it will, could lead to a negligence claim. Hopefully not, but it could do. So make sure that you find out everything that they've got to tell you. So that's all I'll say about that, Craig.
Excellent. All right, so that's selling the whole or part of your business. As we alluded to at the beginning of today's show, we're also going to talk about listing on the stock exchange. So that sounds like a very exciting thing to do. I'm sure a lot of people would love to do that. But with anything when it comes to these sorts of things, there's a process that should be followed in order to do that. So can you go through, Jeremy, the process to list on the stock exchange, please?
Yeah, great question. And I will go through this briefly. I'm not going to go through it in a lot of detail because it is a complicated process. And I will also say that listing on the stock exchange is not for everyone. The minuscule number of businesses that are ever started are ever listed on the stock exchange. However, it is important that if that's something that you want to do, that you are thinking about all the steps that you need to take to list on the stock exchange. Now, we've got a global audience to this show. There are different stock exchanges around the world. There's the Australian Stock Exchange, the ASX. There's different ones in Australia. You've got the NASDAQ. You've got the All Ordinaries. You've got many different stock exchanges. Many different stock exchanges. The London Stock Exchange. Many different stock exchanges around the world. I'm going to give it an overview that might apply to you. It might not. This is not an area to do yourself. In fact, you can't even do it yourself. You have to get advice because the first step is actually to appoint advisors. And if you're going to listen to a stock exchange, appoint the right advisors. So these could be lawyers, accountants, the right investment banks, corporate advisors, and you need to appoint someone to be the lead of that process. This is really important to get the right person because they will have the contacts and help you to be able to put together the right team for you. Now, as much as I work with and I love a lot of other lawyers and accountants, it is not necessarily your lawyer that you've had build your business up to this stage that should be the lawyer to help you list on the stock exchange. It is a very, very important process to get right, and you need industry-specific advisors. What I would recommend to the lawyers on here is if you have a client that's looking through this process, is that you do the investigations and you help your client to find the right lawyer. Because they're going to need a lawyer for their other stuff, and that's not the stock exchange listing lawyer. You need to find the right people on that. You need investment bankers and stockbrokers, and you need to get the right people. So getting the right team is really, really important up front. The second one is to prepare a prospective and due diligence. As I've just talked about before, when you're selling a business or when you're selling shares in a business, the advisors and stakeholders should do a really comprehensive due diligence through your business and prepare a prospectus about your business. There should be a chairperson, often the company's lawyer, a representative of the company, an independent accountant, an underwriter, and other experts that you have through the listing process They'll help you prepare a prospectus. That can be a really great way of actually figuring out all the holes in your company so that you can actually go through and fix those. There are different tests that you have to meet for different companies in Australia. There's the operating business. You've got to have been operating for 3 years and have at least $1 million in turnover. And you've got to have a profit of around 500,000 for the first year, and a statement that includes the directors and their experience. So you've got to have assets. You've either got to, in Australia again, and this does change, the 4 million net tangible assets test. And there's many other little things that you got to have in place. 1.5 million in working capital, show budgets, and show different things for different years. I'm not going to go through it all because it is different. It does change every year, and you need to have different shareholders so that it's not just one or two shareholders that are involved in the company. You need to have directors who are independent and show that you've got the experience of actually operating that kind of company. Those are really important to have in place. I'm not going to go through all the other requirements. If you're interested, you can check out my book and other pages that are out there, and talk to the right advisors. So step 3 is that institution marketing program. So this is where you go through and you sell the IPO to a bunch of different institutional investors. And here you get some really good feedback as to whether or not you're going to be having the correct procedure in place, whether you're actually going to have some buyers, and what your listing price might need to be. Step 4 is to lodge a prospectus with a regulatory body, and this is about making sure that that's right and that there's no problems with that prospectus. And then after they approve it, then you've got to lodge your listing application with the stock exchange. Then there's a marketing and offering period where there's an offer made for the people to actually buy into your shares. Then the last step 7, is when the offer closes, shares are allocated and trading commences. That's when the bell rings. I say the bell dings. It does ding, I suppose, but it rings, and that's when your company is listed on the stock exchange. So that's a very, very brief overview of the process. If you're looking at doing that, make sure you get some advice from your advisors, and make sure that you get the right people that actually can help you out.
Absolutely. Alrighty. So the only questions I had for today's training show about selling part or whole your business and listing on the stock exchange. So Jeremy, before we finish up, I'll throw an open question out there. Is there anything else of importance you think you should share with our listeners and viewers today?
No, I think I've covered everything. I think I'll just reiterate 2 points though. One is to get advice. This is not the time to skimp on fees or think you're saving money, because it will cost you big time in the end. And the other one is just the importance of doing the right due diligence. It just time and time again, we've handled many of these transactions over the years. And time again, I see business owners try to skimp on the due diligence, and it ends up costing them in the long run. Don't skimp on it. Get the right advice. Spend the money. It's an investment in the future and your future success. And if you skimp on it now, almost guaranteed it's going to bite you in the backside later on. So get the advice, and you will be thankful for it going forward. So that's all I had, Craig.
Excellent. Thank you for sharing that. All right, so that is it for today's show. So this is our training show on phase 11 of the business legal life cycle, which is about selling the business or listing on the stock exchange. Today's show was show 183. So if you're interested in the show notes, please jump on the website, businesslegallifecycle.com.au/183 for show 183. We encourage everyone that's thinking about this phase of their business to check out the show notes. Obviously, listen to today's show, come back to it. It's relevant throughout the life cycle. You want to know about this sort of stuff throughout your business. So definitely something to come back to time and time again. So that's it. As I said, get the show notes, like us on Facebook, subscribe to the YouTube channel, review the podcast, get this information out there for all your other business owners out there. So thanks for joining us. We'll see you again next time.
See you next.